In a major ruling, the U.S. Supreme Court has just blocked a lower court ruling that had prevented Texas from using the newly gerrymandered maps for the upcoming midterm election cycle in 2026, which means that the new Republican gerrymander will be in place for Republicans in midterms. Unsurprisingly, the decision was 6-3 along partisan lines, with Justice Kagan, Jackson, and Sotomayor dissenting. Justice Kagan wrote in her dissent, quote, "This court today announces that Texas may run next year's elections with a map the district court found to have violated all of our oft-repeated strictures about the use of race in redistricting. Today's order disrespects the work of a district court that did everything one could ask to carry out its charge, that put aside every consideration except getting the issue before it right. And today's order disserves the millions of Texans whom the district court found were assigned to their new districts based on their race. Because this court's precedents and our Constitution demand better, I respectfully dissent." So why did the Supreme Court rule this way? Because, according to Democracy Docket, in the majority ruling, the justices wrote that Texas was likely to succeed on the merits of its claim that the lower court had failed to honor the presumption of legislative good faith on the part of the Texas legislature, and that the plaintiffs did not produce a viable alternative map that met the state's avowedly partisan goals. In other words, those justices are pretending that Texas's racial gerrymander was somehow not a racial gerrymander, but a partisan gerrymander. Here's Mark Elias explaining why that is completely backwards.
This is a very strange brief because, they don't have a lot of natural tools available to them because the trial court made specific findings of fact, specifically said that after hearing the testimony from Adam Kincaid, the map drawer, that they believed that this was a racial gerrymander. It was not, as Adam Kincaid testified, a partisan gerrymander. And the Supreme Court is bound by those findings of fact unless they are referred to as clearly erroneous. It's hard to see how lay witness testimony where the judges are seeing the person live could ever be found to be clearly erroneous. So they're kind of in a stuck position because on the one hand, the court doesn't believe the lower court didn't credit Adam Kincaid's testimony there. And on the other hand, what my team and the others who brought this case were hanging their hat on was a letter by the Department of Justice, by Harmeet Dillon, saying you need to dismantle these coalition districts, and Greg Abbott saying I'm calling a special session to do so. And that is, I think, even the state of Texas would acknowledge, if it happened, it would be a unconstitutional racial gerrymander.
In other words, the conservative justices are, surprise, surprise, allowing themselves to be lied to because they want to see this gerrymander go into effect because it's in accordance with their political ideology. Another reason for this ruling, according to Democracy Docket, was that, quote, "The majority emphasized the timing of the lower court's injunction, invoking its election law doctrine known as the Purcell principle to argue that judicial changes this close to candidate filing threatens the functioning of elections. Quote, Texas has also made a strong showing of irreparable harm and that the equities and public interests favor it," the majority added. "This court has repeatedly emphasized that lower federal courts should ordinarily not alter the election rules on the eve of an election." I also discussed the prospect of Purcell with Mark Elias. Here's what he had to say on that point.
I mean, there's no question the state of Texas briefs and relies on Purcell as a theory. I have to be honest with you. If December, 11 months before the election is quote unquote too close to the election, like we're starting to actually run out of runway. I mean, literally, there just was an election in November of 2025. Yeah. And if December of 2025 is then too close to November of 2026, I mean, at some point, we're literally going to run out of months in the calendar that are not too close. So, I was quite skeptical of the Supreme Court and critical of the Supreme Court when a couple of years ago they held in a Louisiana rendition case that February of the election year was too late, but bringing it all the way back to December of the off
previous year, yeah.
I mean, literally, there were just elections in November of 2025.
Yeah.
So, I guess unless the map was ordered, or the election law change was ordered the day of the prior election, I'm not sure how much earlier this could have been.
The ruling marks a major win for Trump in his effort to rig maps across the country. And I know it's what some of you may be thinking. Democrats are doing the same thing. Correct. As they should, because Trump and Republicans started this fight, and the last thing that Democrats should do is unilaterally disarm. And so if Donald Trump is going to issue his clarion call to Texas Republicans and they're going to heed his demands, then we have an obligation to respond. And in fact, it's only thanks to that response that we're starting to see any dissent from the GOP. For example, Congressman Kevin Kiley, who will lose his seat in California as the result of California's new maps, has been skewering Mike Johnson publicly and the entire gerrymandering effort. Just today in the New York Times, they reported, quote, "Rarely have things been completely harmonious in the conference, but it does seem like there is an unusually high level of discontent," said Representative Kevin Kiley, a California Republican who's been at odds with Mr. Johnson over the redistricting battles that will likely put him out of a job next year. Quote, "The overriding issue in the House has not been at the forefront of driving policymaking or the agenda in Washington. That is naturally going to be frustrating to members who ran for Congress to make an impact on issues they care about." And yet it's important to note that Kiley was conspicuously quiet only until the moment that the whole redistricting effort impacted him personally, which is a point that I brought up on CNN.
Jessica, do you support independent redistricting for every state, like a national bill that would do that?
I think redistricting by an independent commission allows it to be decided by the people. It allows politicians to be more accountable to the people that they are serving. And I think it also puts us in a position where we have more competitive races.
So is that a yes,
Yes,
nationwide?
absolutely.
And you support something similar?
Absolutely. And in fact, I supported it when the Democrats put exactly that forward with the For the People Act in 2021. And do you remember how many Republicans voted for that bill?
No.
It was 0. Not a single Republican voted for independent redistricting commissions nationwide. And so I think it's interesting that you have all of these Republicans suddenly having their come to Jesus moment when it comes to independent redistricting commissions, only because it's happening in California. And yet there wasn't a single Republican, including Kevin Kiley, who we've heard from, who had come forward when Texas decided to redraw its maps. But suddenly when it's happening to them, when they get a taste of their own medicine, they cry foul. So here's where the redistricting wars stand right now. Texas added 5 seats for Republicans. North Carolina and Missouri both added a seat for Republicans. Ohio added 2 for Republicans. Meanwhile, California added 5 for Democrats. Virginia is on its way to adding anywhere from 2 to 5 for Democrats. Utah's gerrymander was blocked in court, and that'll be another seat for Democrats. And of course, we're still waiting on Florida and possibly Indiana for Republicans, and Maryland and possibly Illinois for Democrats. So it may already be a wash at this point. And remember, that is without thinking about how these gerrymanders may turn out to be dummy manders for the GOP if the districts were drawn too thin for Republicans, and a blue wave means that Democrats actually win more seats as the result of Republicans' efforts to redraw the maps for themselves in a bout of ultimate irony. But I want to be clear about something here. Even if the Democrats do overcome the odds and win out, that does not negate the damage that Trump, Republicans, and the conservatives on the Supreme Court are doing by engaging in this race to the bottom to engineer permanent majorities for themselves in the House. And yet, I'd be a fool to think that I would ever successfully appeal to Republicans. So instead, I'm going to use this time to appeal to Democrats by pointing to this.
Now, the question is, are other governors going to jump in on this from the Democratic side?
And the reality is they should. I mean, I don't, to any governors or state legislators out there, I don't know what the point of building up so much political capital is if you're not willing to use it in this particular moment. I mean, this is a moment where we cannot unilaterally disarm. And so if you're in a position where you have some power to redraw your maps, and I'm talking about these Democrats who are in Oregon and Washington and Colorado, New Jersey, New York, Maryland, across the country, if you have the ability to step up and meet this moment with the urgency that it deserves, I'm calling on you to do exactly what we're doing in California and to fight fire with fire and to take steps that you need to take right now to actually protect our democracy in light of the overreach that we're seeing at the hands of Donald Trump. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.